Hey, good morning and welcome back to Throwback Thursday. Let's go. Good old XR650. Yeah, today's Throwback Thursday will be about my second motorcycle adventure that I took between the 17th and the 21st of March 2018 on the KLR 650. And I think I gave it a nicely appropriate name, and I called it the Berg, the Bush and the Baobab tour. And it would take me into the far northern extremities of the Limpopo province of South Africa. It really was a very special tour, and I look forward to sharing the different days and the preparation for the tour with you. Ride along with me. Oh, let's go. Yeah, so as with all tours, a level of preparation is needed and required to be able to enjoy it to its full and to its maximum. This is that story. One of my favorite places where all the swallows are. Love the spot, just with dozens of swallows flying around. Really pretty. Cool. Yes, so as I mentioned on the bike, welcome back to Throwback Thursday. And today's story is going to be about my second tour. Before leaving for the tour, I had to do a few farkles on Umlando, the KLR 650. I had learned many lessons in the previous tour, and this time I was not going to make the same and similar mistakes. I promised myself after the last tour that I was never ever going to do the rucksack thing again. So I invested and I made a couple of purchases before this tour. The first thing that I put onto Umlando were soft panniers and racks. That was going to take a lot of the luggage off my back, so that was a winner. There was a story around why I chose soft panniers. I was at a motorcycle dealership. I spoke to the motorcycle salesman and I said, which would you prefer? Would you prefer soft panniers or hard panniers? And he said, dude, let me tell you, if you take hard panniers and you off-road and you fall and they get damaged, you have very expensive pot plant holders. I've got a beautiful tank bag, absolutely stunning, perfect, lots of space in it. I got myself a beautiful touring screen from a local South African manufacturer called War Eagle, and that was just amazing and incredible to beat off the buffeting of the wind. A big change and a very necessary change. I got a lovely sump guard for underneath the bike, and that was just a great addition as well. I also got crash bars onto the bike in case the bike tipped over. I found them all to be very necessary upgrades for adventure touring. Before I left, I even felt like a fighter pilot, loading out all my gear like a payload in front of a fighter jet. I would pack all of those items onto the bike for the tour. A tour into the unknown. A tour all into the unknown. So the second stop on Throwback Thursday. Interesting old deserted shed that I found in amongst some trees on my morning rides. Interesting place. Yes, so the first day of the BBBT would take me a decent 351 kilometers to Tabazimbi along a mixture of tar and dirt roads. The tar because it gets to the dirt. After traveling past Hartbeespoort Dam and then stopping off for a short while in Brits, I found an old Huey helicopter on the way out of Brits. The Huey reminded me of my favorite movie, Apocalypse Now, particularly the Ride of the Valkyries, which was my favorite scene of the movie. After leaving Brits, I chose a dirt road at Essen, just after the Beesterkrol station. I think it was called the Liepoort Road. It was a pleasure and absolutely awesome to ride. The tour had officially started riding some dirt roads. Along this road there was even a beautiful river flowing beautifully underneath the bridge. And a little bit further, a tortoise to stop and behold. After the Liepoort Road, I joined the Berg Road towards the Koekepan restaurant, where I stopped for a short while. Unfortunately, it was closed. It was still quite early. The morning had gone splendidly so far, so after this it was going to be to Thabazimbi, get to the campsite, set up the camp, and everything was going perfectly. Boom, boom, boom. The next 40 kilometers proved to be a challenge. There must have been some rain the day prior to me departing, and firstly there was a flurry of flying ants along some of the mud as I left Rooiberg. There were thousands of flying ants, and the sand had started to turn to mud. Then the mud turned into more mud. And more mud. And more mud. And some more mud for good measure. It was an absolutely crazy experience of 40 kilometers of trying to do the bike waddle, try and keep the bike upright, try and do everything that I knew possible to get the bike through this mud. I had never traveled so much mud in my life before. After the mud, I eventually made it to Thabazimbi. How? I have no idea. After reaching the town and stopping there at the local shop, I got some dinner items and headed to my first campsite, Tabankwe. The campsite was perfect. It reminded me of why I did this adventure motorcycling thing. It was a great evening with a braai and an ice-cold beer. The challenging mud section from the morning was just a memory. A perfect end to day one. Fun, let's press on. Next location. Yeah, arriving at one of my favorite spots, Libertas and the Sand River. The second day of the tour would see me travel northwards towards my next destination, Aldays. It would be an approximate 360 kilometers in the saddle on this day. The morning's conditions were perfect, and it would be mostly tar to Lephalale, my first stop. I had a great friend to visit there, Casper Ngwenya. After breakfast, we went to the bike, and he was amazed and enjoyed my touring machine. He even got on and said, hey, one day he wants to get a bike and travel like I am. After leaving Lephalale, I wanted to find another exotic location. I had found Amsterdam in the previous tour, and this time I wanted to find Zanzibar. After traveling further north in Limpopo, I reached the Tropic of Capricorn and crossed that. A few dirt roads would take me to Zanzibar. Luckily, no mud, it was just sand. Some thickish sand, but nothing serious, nothing hectic. And there were some very interesting locations as well. I even thought I got horribly lost. After reaching Zanzibar and stopping there for a short while, I had to get through to Alldays, and a very potholed road took me to Alldays. It was pieces of tar stuck together on a dirt road, more than a tar road. When I reached Alldays, I went and checked into the hotel where I had booked my next night's accommodation. After offloading the bike, I decided to go through a walk through the little town of Alldays and just look at the vendors. I think it was a Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. I even found a vendor called the Music King of Alldays. That was really cool. I had a good chuckle. After that, a few cold beers and a steak would be awesome after day 2's ride. A lovely and less challenging day was enjoyed. After the night in Alldays, day 3 would take me to a campsite called Mountain Fly Fishing, just outside of Berg in the Limpopo province. It was going to be a long day in the saddle. The day's ride would be about 445 kilometers, taking me past my all-time favorite trees, the Baobab. After leaving Alldays, I traveled north towards Mapungubwe and was greeted by some amazing rock formations around the area. After leaving Mapungubwe and the beautiful rock formations, I traveled east towards Musina. Taking the road past Mapungubwe to Musina would reveal dozens of these beautiful trees. Each tree has a story to tell, and the Baobab is steeped in myth and legend. After reaching Musina, it was south past Sapis, and then towards Mikado through the tunnels. That was amazing on the KLR 650, first big mountain pass that I did. After Mikado, I had heard of a deserted town called Daviesville, and I wanted to try and find it. The way to Daviesville was through a lot of dirt roads and through a lot of back roads, but I did eventually locate it as I had the GPS coordinates. And it was rather creepy, in all honesty. After Daviesville, the next stop off would be the Sunland Baobab tree. It is believed to be 1100 years old. Sadly, it had split in two, I think from a lightning strike or there was a heavy storm. The pub that used to be inside the tree was no longer there, so I couldn't enjoy a refreshment at the pub. I did, though, get to walk around the tree in all of its majesty. After taking in the Sunland Baobab and all of its beauty, I headed to the campsite just outside Berg. The road to the campsite was beautiful and went along a beautiful forested road. The road leading up to the campsite was nicely rutted and slightly challenging, but an absolute pleasure. There were some ominous clouds all about though, so that was a worry because I had to travel that road the next day, so I was hoping that no rain would come that night. As I arrived, I was blown away by the beauty of this campsite, Mountain Fly Fishing. Just beneath the campsite was a beautiful trout dam. Each campsite had separate ablution blocks, a paved area, a braai stand and a table. Hot water would be provided by a donkey. A lovely braai dinner was devoured that night, after a long day of being in the saddle again. A perfect end to a perfect day. Let's go. second last day of the tour would take me from mountain fly fishing to Dahlstrom for my last night. I left early in the morning from mountain fly fishing after an incredible night's stay, and along the same beautiful forest road back towards Heernitzberg, past Ebenezer Dam, via Zanin. I wanted to find another deserted town called Leidsdorp. I had read about it, and I'd also seen on the map that there was another giant Baobab in the area. When I got to Leidsdorp, after a bit of a dirt road section, I found that it wasn't deserted at all, but had new life, which was amazing to see. Renovations around the different buildings and farmhouses had started and commenced, and there were people staying there. I should really go back sometime and see what it looks like today. I took a quick walk around Leidsdorp, and after that I headed towards the giant Baobab that showed on the map just outside of Gravelot. As I arrived, its sign said, "Please tell your friends to come and visit. I am very lonely." It was a beautiful Baobab, all alone, solitary in itself. A ladder would take you up to the top. A small hole in the trunk would allow you to climb inside and see inside. I still don't understand to this day why people would want to put graffiti into such a thing, but I suppose it is what it is. After a great visit at the Baobab, it was time to head south towards Dahlstrom. The route would take me to Orichstad, from Orichstad to Masching, and then from Masching to Dahlstrom. Little did I know that there was going to be a lovely mountain pass called the Albert Erasmus Pass, with tunnels as well, on the way through to Orichstad. I was blown away by that pass. It was really, really pretty. That pass will see me there in the future again for another tour. After Orichstad to Masching, and then on to Dahlstrom. Stopping off in Dahlstrom, I got my last night's bride dinner, which would be a lot of meat again, some bread and some salad. I arrived at the Dahlstrom Dam for my last night's camp. It was really special, and I had the whole campsite to myself as usual. There were horses about, cropping at the grass, and I lit my fire, a raging fire for the last night. It was a little bit misty at the dam, but no real threat of rain. I do remember that the horses ate my bread for that night's dinner. Anyway, they enjoyed it. As I stood by the fire, fantastic memories flooded back of the last few days. Sadly, it was the last night of the tour, and tomorrow I was to head back home to Johannesburg, back to reality. The day's total was a blissful and amazing 450 kilometers of amazing sights and a great last night's accommodation. On the last day, the 21st of March, after striking camp, it was time to head back home. After my morning coffee, I was greeted by some chickens around the campsite, so it was really lekker. I left Dahlstrom towards Belfast, and the road was shrouded in mist. I realized that the mist was even worse than the mud. I could not even see 2 meters in front of me. It was just covered in mist. It does not help that I wear glasses, so it just compounds things. So I was glad to get out of that mist, but it was rather thick. I even pulled off the side of the road at one stage just to wait a little bit, because you couldn't see cars coming on. If anybody had to overtake, you were going to be flattened. So yeah, mist is probably worse than mud. After the mist, it was a straight road all the way back to home. It was the N4, I think it is, that takes you from Belfast to Witbank to Johannesburg. So it was just a straight highway all the way back. All in all, a 282 kilometer trip home, and it was back to home, sweet home, and my warm, comfortable bed. What an incredible journey, what an incredible ride. An incredible 1,800 kilometers traveled through 23 odd towns and villages. A truly enjoyable tour that I will long remember, especially the mud. Whenever I see mud, my mind goes back to that tour and that occurrence of riding 40 kilometers of treachery. The rebuilt KLR went perfectly with only one small oil fill during the 1,800 kilometers, so I was very happy with that. The panniers and all the other Farkles were definitely the way to travel in the future. I hope that you enjoyed this Throwback Thursday episode. There are still many more tours to share on Throwback Thursday. Have a lekker day. Cheers. Bye. Hello. Hello, doggy. Hello, doggy. Did you miss me, boss? Bear. Hello, bear. Hey, hello, bear. Hello, crazy dog.